The Whirlpool of Power and Bloodline, the tragedy of consanguineous women in European history. In the marble-paved corridors and magnificent palaces of medieval and early modern Europe, marriage was not a matter of love, but a cold political chess move. Crowns, lands, and power were exchanged through marriage contracts arranged before the children could even walk. To consolidate power, protect assets, and create strategic alliances, royal families employed a simple yet perilous strategy: keep it in the family. Cousins married cousins, nieces married their own uncles, and their family trees gradually became closed loops, filled with ambition, but also harboring the seeds of tragedy. No one mastered the art of consanguineous marriage more skillfully than the House of Habsburg, the dynasty that dominated Europe for centuries with the motto, "Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry." But the price of power was a dangerous genetic gamble. The women in these dynasties, despite being born with noble blue blood, often had to live lives dictated by their lineage. They were pawns on the political chessboard, breeding machines to perpetuate the bloodline, and sometimes the tragic victims of their own genetic heritage. This article will delve into the lives of some of the most prominent women caught in this whirlpool of power and bloodline. The story of Juana of Castile, also known as Juana la Loca, Joanna the Mad, is perhaps one of the most famous personal tragedies arising from inbreeding. Born in 1479, she was the daughter of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, the power couple who unified Spain and sponsored Columbus, but who were also second cousins. Juana hailed from the House of Trastmara, a dynasty that already had a strong tradition of endogamy. By her time, the royal blood had been stirred just enough to survive, but not enough to avoid issues like emotional instability and chronic melancholy. As a teenager, Juana was married to Philip the Handsome of the House of Habsburg. Naturally, Philip was also her cousin. The Habsburgs loved two things: collecting crowns and ignoring genetic warnings. Initially, the marriage seemed promising. Juana was intelligent, beautiful, and deeply in love with Philip. Unfortunately, Philip loved every woman who was not his wife. Juana's passionate nature and jealousy became a thorn in the side of a court accustomed to cold, loveless marriages. The turning point in Juana's life came when Philip died suddenly, possibly from typhoid fever or, as a video narrative suggests, due to karmic retribution. Juana was completely devastated. Her grief was so intense that it became extreme. She refused to bury her husband. She had Philip's coffin accompany her on her travels across Spain, occasionally ordering the lid to be opened so she could check on him. This behavior, while perhaps an expression of tragic love, became a weapon for her political enemies. Her father, Ferdinand, and later her son, Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, used it as proof that she was insane and unfit to rule. Both men conveniently ruled in her stead, while Juana was confined to a convent for nearly the rest of her life. To this day, historians debate, was Juana truly mad? Or was she just a strong, emotional woman, broken by betrayal and grief, who became politically inconvenient in a world where a queen showing emotion was considered treasonous? Whatever the answer, Juana's life was a perfect storm of royal pressure, inbred genetics, and the world's worst coping mechanisms. If Juana is an example of psychological tragedy, the story of Maria Ana of Spain is the clearest testament to the devastating physical consequences of inbreeding. Born in 1634, Maria Ana was the daughter of King Philip III of Spain and Margaret of Austria, who were also first cousins. True to Habsburg tradition, she was married to her own maternal uncle, Ferdinand III, the Holy Roman Emperor. Maria Ana was described as an intelligent, pious, and politically astute woman. She brought dignity to the court, along with the genetic copy of a copy. Her most significant contribution to history, sadly, was giving birth to Charles II of Spain, the king considered to be the most severely inbred product to ever sit on a throne. Charles II inherited not just the crown, but the entire backlogged gene pool of the Habsburgs. He had an oversized jaw, the infamous Habsburg jaw, a weak chin, chronic illness, infertility, and suspected cognitive impairment. He struggled with basic functions like eating and speaking. Was it Maria Ana's fault? Of course not. She did not invent the Habsburg matchmaking system, but she played her part in this long-standing family tradition. She deeply loved and protected her frail son. She served as regent during Charles's minority and tried to shield him from court intrigues. Maria Anna died in 1696, just a year before her son. The Spanish Empire, which she had helped push into decline, soon collapsed into the War of the Spanish Succession, a war sparked in part because Charles II could not produce an heir. Obviously, he could not. Not every inbred royal woman met a tragic end like Juana or Maria Anna. Many of them learned to navigate the ruthless political world and wield their power effectively, though their personal lives were often sacrificed. Diplomatic pawns. The lives of Isabella of Habsburg, born 1501, daughter of Juana and Philip, and her sister, Eleanor of Austria, born 1498, are classic examples of the diplomatic pawn role. Their DNA was a repeated royal formula. Isabella was married to Christian II of Denmark, her cousin, in an unhappy union, and died at the age of 24. Eleanor was a bit luckier. She escaped a marriage to Henry VIII of England, but was later forced to marry Manuel I of Portugal, a distant cousin, much older than her. After being widowed, she was married off again to Francis I of France, the arch-enemy of her brother, Charles V. The second marriage was cold and childless. Eleanor survived 2 royal marriages without causing scandal, demonstrating patience and composure, perfectly fulfilling the job description of a Habsburg woman: marry a relative, produce an heir, and pretend not to notice the family resemblance growing more pronounced with each generation. Political masters. In contrast to the pawns, some women rose to wield real power. Blanche of Castile, born 1188, who married her cousin Louis VIII of France, became a powerful and effective regent for her son, King Louis IX. She crushed rebellions and kept the kingdom intact. Similarly, Margaret of Austria, born 1480, after 2 failed betrothals, one where she was sent back, another where her husband died early, decided to retire from the marriage circuit. Instead, she became the governor of the Netherlands, ruling the region with intelligence and diplomatic skill, remembered more for her policies than her pedigree. Another skilled ruler was Isabella Clara Eugenia, born 1566, the favorite daughter of King Philip II of Spain. She and her husband, also her cousin, ruled the Spanish Netherlands with great proficiency, and she continued to rule alone after his death, earning immense respect. Tragic queens. The story of Catherine of Aragon, born 1485, is a personal tragedy that led to a massive historical upheaval. As the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, she married 2 English princes, who were brothers. When she failed to produce a male heir for Henry V, her piety and steadfastness clashed with the king's ambition, leading to Henry V's break from the Catholic Church and the creation of the Church of England. Catherine was exiled and stripped of her title, but to her death, she maintained that she was Henry's lawful wife and queen. Another tragedy is that of Mary of Burgundy, born 1457. As the sole heiress to the wealthy region of Burgundy, she married Maximilian of Austria, later Holy Roman Emperor, bringing her entire territory into the hands of the Habsburgs. Their marriage was said to be happy, but she died tragically at 25 after a fall from a horse, leaving a legacy that reshaped the map of Europe. The strategy of inbred marriage was not limited to the Habsburgs. It was a common practice among the European nobility. Yolande of Aragon, born 1384, who married her cousin, is a prime example of a powerful woman operating behind the scenes. She was an architect of alliances, a financier of armies, and notably, one of the few royals who supported Joan of Arc and survived the political machinations that followed. She was the brains behind the throne, a master of political manipulation. A figure who cannot be overlooked is Catherine de' Medici, born 1519. Although not born into a family as inbred by Habsburg standards, she quickly made up for it upon marrying into the French royal family. After the death of her husband, King Henry VI, she became the Queen Mother and the true power behind her 3 sons, who successively took the throne. She was a central figure in the French Wars of Religion, a ruthless strategist who is believed to have been involved in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Catherine married her children to relatives in the great houses of Europe, proving she had learned and masterfully applied the strategy of consanguineous marriage to maintain power for the House of Valois. The lives of these women form a complex tapestry, woven from the threads of power, duty, faith, and genetics. They were not one-dimensional figures. They were queens, regents, diplomats, mothers, and sometimes victims. They faced the pressure to produce heirs, maintain fragile alliances, and often endured loneliness and betrayal in their arranged marriages. Their legacy lies not only in the crowns they wore or the children they bore. It lies in how they navigated a world dominated by men, how they wielded power both formally and informally, and how they shaped the destinies of nations. Their stories are a profound reminder of the ruthless nature of dynastic politics, where the family tree was both a ladder to supreme power and a potential genetic prison. They were women bound by their bloodline, but their legacies transcended those limits to be forever etched in history. When sleep was a journey, exploring the mysterious sleep rituals of the ancients. In the modern world, sleep is often seen as a mere biological event, an off switch for the body and brain to regenerate energy after a long day. We seek comfort, quiet, and a dreamless slumber. But for ancient civilizations, falling asleep was not an end, but a beginning. It was an intentional journey into unseen realms, a sacred bridge connecting the world of the living with gods, spirits, and the cosmos. From the incense-filled temples of Greece to the purification rituals of Native Americans, sleep was enveloped in countless complex, mysterious, and profound ceremonies. It wasn't just about rest. It was a dialogue with the divine, a method of healing, a source of prophecy, and sometimes, a battle against the forces of darkness. Let us journey back in time to discover how the ancients prepared for their nightly adventure into the world of dreams. In ancient Greece, if you were plagued by an illness and earthly medicine had failed, you wouldn't go to a hospital. You would seek out an Asclepian, a dream temple dedicated to the healing god Asclepius. These were not cozy retreats. They were vast spiritual complexes where the sick came not just for treatment, but to be transformed through the power of dreams. To prepare for a sacred night's sleep here, a pilgrim had to undergo a strict purification process. They would fast for days, bathe in sacred springs, offer sacrifices, often animals, and sometimes abstain from both sex and worldly thoughts. The goal was to cleanse both body and spirit before entering incubation, of spiritual sleep where healing visions could occur. Inside the abaton, a dark and enclosed chamber, supplicants would lie down on stone slabs or animal hides. Torches flickered on the walls, and priests whispered prayers and burned incense. Sleep here was a deliberate descent into another realm. The Greeks believed that the dreams experienced in the temple were not random. They were direct messages from the god Asclepius himself. A person might dream of snakes slithering over their body. This, strangely, was a good sign. The snake was the sacred animal of Asclepius, symbolizing rebirth and divine intervention. In fact, non-venomous snakes were often allowed to roam freely on the temple grounds, especially in the sleeping chambers. People actively slept among serpents and considered it a sacred honor. In the morning, the temple priests, who acted more like dream psychoanalysts than doctors, would help interpret the visions. Sometimes they would prescribe herbs or dietary changes. Other times, the dream itself was the cure, believed to have realigned the patient's soul or spirit. For the Greeks, sleep was a divine medicine, a conversation with the gods that could change one's fate. If the Greeks sought healing in sleep, the Egyptians and Mesopotamians saw it as a perilous journey of the soul. In ancient Egypt, sleep was considered a miniature death, a time when the soul, or ba, left the physical body to wander the spiritual realms. To guide this journey and protect the dreamer from hostile forces, the Egyptians developed complex rituals. Frankincense and myrrh were burned not just for their fragrance, but to purify the air of demons and invite the blessings of the gods. The incense smoke symbolized prayers ascending to the heavens, enveloping the sleeper in a sacred protective layer. Incantations were recited, either publicly by priests or whispered privately. These were active spiritual defense barriers, calling upon deities like Thoth, the god of wisdom and dreams, or Bes, a dwarfish, lion-faced god tasked with warding off nightmares. Images of Bes were often carved into headboards or painted on bedroom walls, his grotesque features believed to terrify anything lurking in the shadows. The bedroom itself was a sacred space. Beds were often raised high, and sometimes had protective amulets built into their frames. In Babylon and across Mesopotamia, the line between dream and destiny was almost non-existent. Sleep was a battleground of omens, spirits, and divine messages. The Babylonians valued dreams so highly that an entire profession revolved around them. Dream interpreting priests, known as Shalu, were trained to decipher nightly visions. To ensure benevolent dreams, people performed protective rituals. They wore amulets, placed clay tablets inscribed with prayers under their beds, and drew magical symbols around their sleeping area, a kind of spiritual security system. Incense made from juniper and cedar was burned at dusk to purify the environment and please the gods. They believed dreams could be sent by gods like Marduk or Ishtar, but also by demons. Important dreams were recorded on clay tablets, sometimes with illustrations. Over time, the Babylonians compiled massive dream dictionaries, classifying symbols and their meanings. A dream of a lion could signify victory. A dream of drowning might be an omen of betrayal. In the East, sleep was not a battle, but a return and a rebalancing. In the Vedic world of ancient India, sleep was a cosmic event. The Vedic text describes sleep as a sacred state where the soul Atman returned to the universal spirit Brahman before being reborn at dawn. To enter this sacred ritual, discipline and awareness were essential. One of the most crucial aspects was breath control, or pranayama. People were taught to calm the mind and slow the breath before sleeping, not to fall asleep faster, but to align their breath with the pulse of the cosmos. Evening mantras in Sanskrit were chanted to praise the gods and seek protection. The direction of sleep was also critical. Sleeping with one's head pointing north was considered unlucky as it was the direction of the realm of the dead. Oils and herbs also played a vital role. Ancient Ayurvedic texts described massaging the body with warm sesame oil abhyanga before bed to soothe the nervous system and prepare the mind for deeper dreams. Meanwhile, in ancient China, particularly in the Taoist tradition, sleep was an energetic reset. The human body was filled with qi, a life force that flows through channels called meridians. If this flow was disrupted, sleep would be affected. Therefore, nightly rituals focused on preserving and regulating qi. Taoist monks developed pre-sleep exercises like qigong, slow, mindful movements combined with deep breathing. This was followed by meditation to calm the shen, or spirit, which was believed to reside in the heart. The sleeping environment was carefully arranged according to principles that would later evolve into feng shui. Beds were made of wood or bamboo, pillows were firm and low, and rooms were minimally decorated to avoid overstimulation. Sleeping position also mattered. Lying on the right side was considered optimal. Dreams were seen as the journeys of the Hun, the ethereal soul, while the Po, the corporeal soul, remained with the body. For Taoists, proper sleep was a form of internal alchemy, a method of cultivating immortality night after night. For cultures with a deep connection to nature, sleep was the most direct portal to the spirit world. To the ancient Celts, dreams were the gateway to the other world, a mystical realm where spirits, fae, and ancestors resided. The Druids, their spiritual leaders, believed that during sleep, the soul could cross the boundary into a place of deeper truth. To do so, they used herbs like mugwort and vervain, plants still associated with dreams and visions today. They were burned as incense or placed under pillows to enhance dream lucidity. During important festivals like Samhain, the Celtic New Year, people would sleep in places of supposed energetic convergence such as stone circles or sacred groves to receive messages from deceased relatives. In the Americas, long before the arrival of Europeans, many native tribes saw dreams as the path to spiritual guidance. To prepare for this connection, purification rituals like the sweat lodge were common. For those seeking deeper visions, especially young men coming of age. They would undertake a vision quest, a sacred rite involving fasting, solitude, and sleeping in nature for several nights. The dreams they had during this time would be interpreted by elders and often determine their future role in the tribe. The most famous symbol is perhaps the dreamcatcher of the Ojibwe people, an intricate web hung over a bed to filter dreams, trapping nightmares, and allowing only good dreams to pass through. From the complex and somewhat frightening rituals of Greece to the subtle harmony of the East, a universal belief connected ancient civilizations. Sleep was not a passive state. It was a dialogue with the unseen, an act that demanded preparation, respect, and courage. These rituals reveal a profound human need to find meaning in the 1/3 of our lives we spend unconscious. They show a belief that even in the dark, when we are most vulnerable, we are not alone. Instead, we are engaging in a cosmic dance, connecting with the past, the future, and the deepest essence of existence. Though the modern world has stripped sleep of much of its mystique, these stories of ancient rituals are a reminder that the night always holds wonders, waiting for those who dare to listen. Heracleion, the rise and resurrection of Egypt's Atlantis from the depths of the sea. Human history has always been captivated by stories of lost cities. Atlantis, El Dorado, names that echo through the centuries as legends of wealth and splendor swallowed by time. But what if one of those legends were real? What if a city, once the gateway to one of the world's greatest civilizations, vanished so completely from the map that it was forgotten for over a millennium, only to be spectacularly reborn in the modern era? This is the story of Heracleion. To the Greeks, it was Heracleion. To the native Egyptians, it was Thonis. For centuries, scholars debated whether they were two separate cities, but in reality, they were one, a prosperous metropolis, a bustling center of trade and religion, that once proudly guarded the entrance to Egypt before sinking silently beneath the waters of the Mediterranean. This is the story of its incredible glory, its mysterious demise beneath the sea, and its spectacular resurrection from a watery grave. Imagine you are a Greek merchant in the 5th century BC, your ship laden with wine and olive oil, entering the mouth of the Nile. Your first, and mandatory, port of call is Heracleion Thonis. This city was not just a port, it was the face of Egypt, the place where the power, wealth, and authority of the pharaohs were first displayed to the outside world. Strategically located near the canopic mouth of the Nile, Heracleion acted as a customs checkpoint and a cultural filter. Everything entering Egypt by sea had to pass through here first. Ships from Greece, Phoenicia, and the Levant arrived, carrying silver, cedarwood, and luxury goods, to trade for Egypt's signature exports, papyrus, grain, and linen. Here, goods were documented, taxed, and blessed, under the watchful eyes of priest officials and colossal statues of gods. Heracleion has been called the Venice of Egypt, though it predates Venice by more than 1,000 years. A dense network of canals ran between stone buildings and harbors, where boats moved goods and people. But what truly awed visitors was the monumental architecture. Massive temples carved from solid stone blocks, with statues over 5 meters tall of gods like Amun, Gerib, and Horus, loomed over the port. This city was not just a commercial hub, it was a religious capital. The central temple, dedicated to Amun Gerib, a fusion of the Egyptian god Amun and a local deity, was where pharaohs came to perform sacred rites, receive the blessings of the gods, and legitimize their reign. It was where earthly power and divine authority merged. In the streets and markets of Heracleion, Egyptians, Greeks, Phoenicians, and many other peoples lived, worked, and mingled, creating a vibrant cultural melting pot. The rise of Heracleion was spectacular, but its fall was slow, silent, and devastating. Unlike cities destroyed by fire or war, Heracleion disappeared beneath the sea in a gradual, almost ghostly decline. There was no single doomsday. Instead, the city was erased by a series of natural disasters that unfolded over centuries. The first culprit was tectonic activity. The Nile Delta lies in a seismically active region, and Heracleion's foundations were particularly vulnerable. The city was built on accumulated silt and clay, not on solid bedrock. Small but repeated earthquakes likely weakened the waterlogged ground beneath the city. But the decisive factor was not just the tremors. It was a geological phenomenon known as soil liquefaction. Imagine a layer of wet sand suddenly turning into quicksand. That is precisely what happened beneath Heracleion. As earthquakes shook the delta and rising sea levels pushed saltwater further inland, the water-saturated ground lost its ability to support the weight of the massive structures. The ground literally turned to liquid. Entire sections of the city began to sink. Buildings, temples, and even moored ships were pulled down into the mud. Over time, the city fragmented. Canals overflowed, harbors collapsed, and temples began to tilt and then disappear beneath the water. The bustling port slowly became unusable. At the same time, a new city, Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC, was rising nearby. With a more stable coastal location and favored by the new Greek-descended Ptolemaic kings, Alexandria gradually supplanted Heracleion, drawing away trade, power, and the elite. Heracleion slowly became a shadow of its former self, still sacred, but no longer essential. By the 8th century AD, it had almost completely vanished beneath the Mediterranean. The people of Heracleion did not flee in panic. They adapted, rebuilt, prayed, and then one day, it was simply gone. Boats still sailed over its submerged ruins, fishermen casting their nets where stone gods once reigned. The memory of the city faded until even its name became a myth. For over 1,200 years, Heracleion existed only in fragmented texts by Greek historians like Herodotus and Strabo. Many dismissed it as a legend, an Atlantis of Egypt. No one truly believed it could be found until the year 2000. The French underwater archaeologist, Frank Gaudio, along with his institute, the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology (EASM), had spent years studying ancient texts and scouring the murky waters of Aboukir Bay. Off the coast of modern Alexandria, Gaudio believed the myth was real. Using advanced technology like sonar and magnetometers, his team scanned the seabed, identifying anomalies hidden beneath meters of silt. What emerged was not just a few scattered relics. It was an entire submerged city. Streets, canals, temples, monuments, and shipwrecks lay there, preserved in the anaerobic oxygen-poor environment of the mud, protected from corrosion. It was a eureka moment for modern archaeology. A city thought to be a myth had been found, preserved almost perfectly, like a time capsule. Gaudio's discovery has unlocked an invaluable archaeological treasure trove, revealing the secrets of a lost world. The most spectacular finds are the colossal statues. These include statues over 5 meters tall of a Ptolemaic king and queen, and Egyptian gods like Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood, and Isis, found in near-perfect condition. Some statues were even found standing eerily upright on the seabed, as if they were still guarding their lost city. Then there is the ghost fleet. Over 70 ancient shipwrecks have been identified, forming a unique maritime graveyard. Many ships still contain their cargo, providing unprecedented insights into ancient trade and shipbuilding. Wooden hulls, anchors, and nautical tools have helped researchers reconstruct life at sea thousands of years ago. But perhaps the most important discoveries for historians are the stone slabs, or stelae. One massive granite stele, known as the Decree of Nectaneboi, inscribed with religious laws and temple privileges, provides solid proof that Heracleion was a major state-sponsored religious center. Another stele, inscribed in both Egyptian and Greek, solved a centuries-old historical mystery. It confirmed that Thonis and Heracleion were indeed the same city. This bilingual stele was as important as the Rosetta Stone for deciphering the city's mystery. Alongside the monumental objects, thousands of smaller artifacts paint a vivid picture of daily life. Gold coins, lead weights, exquisite jewelry, bronze ritual vessels, and ceramic fragments. These personal items, from oil lamps to writing tools, have breathed life into the ruins, telling the stories of the people who once lived, worshipped, and dreamed here. The rediscovery of Heracleion is not just an archaeological achievement, it is a resurrection. It has rewritten a significant part of Egyptian history. Heracleion challenges the traditional image of Egypt as a landlocked, desert civilization confined along the Nile. This was a maritime city, multicultural, and open to the world. Its culture was not static or insular. It embraced foreign influence while retaining a deep Egyptian soul. The existence of bilingual inscriptions and Greco-Egyptian religious fusion points to a flexible and complex society. For historians, Heracleion is a gold mine, filling the gaps in our understanding of the late periods of ancient Egypt and the early Hellenistic era. It shows what a vibrant port city looked like, how its temples functioned as both sacred and administrative hubs, and how natural disaster could slowly destroy the gateway to an empire. Today, the treasures of Heracleion are displayed in museums around the world, its story told in documentaries and books, but much of the city still sleeps beneath the waves, unexcavated. Heracleion is no longer lost, but it remains a mystery, a ghost city between two worlds, whispering through time from a sunken age of gods, trade, and vanished empires. Its story is not yet over, and the seabed still holds many secrets waiting to be told. A smile from the past, the incredible and sometimes terrifying journey of ancient dentistry. The toothache, a universal agony, a silent torment that has haunted humanity since its dawn. Today, we have painkillers, anesthesia, and sterile dental clinics. But imagine a world without them. When a tooth abscessed or decayed to the pulp, what did our ancestors do? Did they simply suffer in silence? The answer, surprisingly, is no. Long before modern dentistry, ancient civilizations across the world developed treatments for oral ailments that were creative or complex, and at times, utterly terrifying. From 9,000-year-old stone drills to exquisite gold dental bridges and gem-encrusted teeth, the history of dentistry is a fascinating tale of human resilience, artistry, and courage. Let us embark on a journey to discover how our ancestors confronted the common enemy of dental disease. Our story begins not in Egypt or Greece, but at an archaeological site called Mehrgarh in modern-day Pakistan. Here, scientists discovered the earliest evidence of dentistry, dating back to around 7000 BC, predating the pyramids by millennia. They found skulls with precise, intentional holes drilled into their molars. These were not accidental injuries. They were created with sharp flint tools, likely attached to a bow drill, a device that uses the back and forth motion of a bowstring to rotate a drill bit, similar to how early humans started fires. These holes are thought to have been made to remove rotten tooth tissue, relieve pressure from abscesses, or perhaps even for ritualistic reasons. The most incredible part is that these individuals survived the procedure. Imagine enduring the excruciating pain of having someone drill into your tooth with a sharp stone, without any form of anesthesia. This would have required extraordinary courage. In some cases, archaeologists even found traces of plant-based resin or bitumen, suggesting a rudimentary attempt to fill the cavity. These findings rewrote history, proving that humanity's fight against tooth decay began very early in the dawn of civilization. When it comes to ancient medicine, Egypt often takes center stage, and dentistry is no exception. The world's first known dentist was an Egyptian named Hezire, who lived around 2600 BC. His tomb bears the title, Chief of the Toothers and Physicians, indicating that dentistry was already a respected profession in the Old Kingdom. However, Egyptian dentistry was a strange mix of practical techniques and magical rituals. Ancient medical texts like the Ebers Papyrus contain recipes for treating toothaches and gum disease. Some remedies were quite logical, such as using chewed herbs and honey. Both have antibacterial properties. But others were rather bizarre, for example, placing a dead mouse on an aching tooth and reciting incantations to drive out evil spirits. In terms of oral hygiene, the Egyptians were ahead of their time. They used frayed twigs to brush their teeth, chewed on aromatic sticks to freshen their breath, and even created a primitive toothpaste from crushed eggshells, ox hooves, pumice, and myrrh. It may have been gritty and lacked a minty flavor, but it got the job done. Regarding surgery, evidence from mummies shows attempts at drilling molars and draining abscesses. They also created crude splints using wire to stabilize loose teeth. Some skulls have even been found with gold wires and metal bands, possibly the earliest examples of dental bridges. However, it is debated whether these were used in life or added post-mortem for aesthetic purposes in the afterlife. Regardless, it shows the Egyptians were thinking creatively about preserving the structure of the mouth. While the Egyptians were mixing ox hooves for toothpaste, the Etruscans in ancient Italy were pioneering a much more glamorous field, prosthetic dentistry. Around 700 BC, these skilled artisans crafted what could be considered the world's first dental bridges, elegant and functional solutions for tooth loss. In Etruscan burial sites, archaeologists have found skulls fitted with gold bands and wires holding replacement teeth. These were not just functional patches, they were status symbols. In many cases, the replacement teeth were real human or animal teeth, often from cattle, skillfully attached alongside the living teeth with fine gold rings. This was delicate work that required masterful metallurgical skill, and it was certainly reserved for the elite. The Etruscans understood that tooth loss not only affected chewing, but also changed the entire shape of the face. In a society where appearance and status were deeply intertwined, this was incredibly important. The later Roman Empire inherited and expanded upon this knowledge with their characteristic efficiency. The Roman medical writer Celsus described techniques for tooth extraction and pain management. The Romans used abrasive powders made from crushed bones and oyster shells to clean their teeth. Perhaps the most shocking hygiene practice was the use of urine as a mouthwash. The ammonia in urine has a powerful whitening effect, and it was bottled and imported from provinces like Portugal. The Roman elite may have been gargling daily with this ghastly liquid, followed by a rinse of wine or vinegar. Clearly, vanity can triumph over disgust. In surgery, Roman doctors used forceps, scalpels, and dental elevators to extract teeth, especially for soldiers, as oral health was considered crucial for combat readiness. Across the Atlantic, the Mayan civilization in Mesoamerica turned dentistry into a literal art form. For them, dental modification was not just about health. It was about status, identity, and spiritual symbolism. Archaeological finds have revealed skulls with intricate dental work. Many Mayan elites had jade, turquoise, hematite, or obsidian inlaid into their front teeth, not after death, but while they were alive. Perfect little holes were drilled into the tooth enamel using primitive rotating tools, likely lubricated with water and quartz powder. The gems were then fixed in place with tree sap resin. The precision of these modifications is astounding, showing that the Mayans had a deep understanding of dental anatomy to avoid damaging the nerve. But why did they do it? The answer lies in cultural significance. For the Mayans, the mouth was a sacred place. Modifying teeth was a way to honor the gods and signal royal status. Jade, for example, was associated with life, fertility, and divine favor. A ruler with jade-inlaid teeth was not just showing off. They were demonstrating their divine power. The Mayans also practiced tooth filing, reshaping canines and incisors into sharp points or symbolic shapes, sometimes mimicking animal forms to invoke spiritual protection. In the East, dentistry was approached from an entirely different angle: holistic philosophy. In ancient China, dentistry was deeply integrated into traditional Chinese medicine (TCM). Physicians believed that oral health reflected the health of the entire body. A toothache was not just a dental problem, it was a sign of an internal imbalance in the organs, particularly the stomach and kidneys. Instead of attacking the symptom, they sought to restore balance through diet, acupuncture, and herbal remedies. Acupuncture was used to target points along the jaw and neck to alleviate pain. They focused on prevention, with the use of aromatic twigs for cleaning and tooth powders made from cloves, mint, and ginseng. In ancient India, the Ayurvedic system of medicine also prized a holistic approach. Ancient texts like the Sushruta Samhita contain detailed observations on oral care. One of the oldest practices was using herbal chewing sticks from trees like neem, which has natural antibacterial properties. But perhaps most famous is the practice of oil pulling, where sesame or coconut oil is held and swished in the mouth for several minutes. This ritual was believed to pull toxins from the body and strengthen teeth and gums. Surprisingly, modern studies have shown that oil pulling can indeed reduce harmful bacteria. Despite the focus on prevention, Ayurvedic texts also detail surgical instruments for extractions and lancing abscesses, indicating a comprehensive medical system. From the crude stone drills of Pakistan to the golden bridges of Italy, from the jade-inlaid teeth of Central America to the oil-pulling rituals of India, the history of ancient dentistry is a colorful global tapestry of innovation, ritual, and resilience. Our ancestors, despite lacking germ theory or X-rays, understood that a failing tooth caused suffering, and they did everything in their power to intervene. Their dentistry was not just medicine, it was spirituality, aesthetics, philosophy, and even politics. A smile could convey divine favor, while a diseased tooth could be a sign of internal imbalance. Today, we can be incredibly grateful for anesthesia, high-tech instruments, and advanced medical knowledge. But the foundations of modern dentistry were laid by these healers, artisans, and ordinary people thousands of years ago. They faced pain with incredible ingenuity and extraordinary courage. Their story is a testament that, for a very long time, a healthy smile has always been a treasure worth fighting for.